Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. As you can see, the topic today is food, health, planet, our future as a species. And I have a different title that I use for this same presentation sometimes. I call it the most important topic in the history of humanity. And by definition, what could be more important to humans than the future of our species? So I'm going to cover a lot of data today about that topic, and I hope you appreciate it. I'm going to start out by putting our planet in perspective, calling on Dr. E.O. Wilson to help me do that. Pulitzer Prize-winning professor at Harvard. He's the author of that book there called The Meaning of Human Existence, which I highly recommend, a 2014 book. But Dr. Wilson in the book talks about the fact that there are billions of planets in our Milky Way galaxy, and there's billions of galaxies. So that means there's trillions of planets. And as far as we know, this is the only one of trillions of planets that's got what it takes to keep us alive. So I want to go to planet Earth and start there. One small planet among trillions of planets in the universe. Life began on planet Earth about 4 billion years ago. Humans emerged as a species about 200,000 years ago. So the first time I spoke to a 6th grade class in Connecticut, I wanted to help them put their arms around just what that means. And so I said, put our time in perspective. If we crammed all 4 billion years of life on Earth into just 1 year, humans have been here for just 26 minutes of the last hour of that 1 year. So let's go back 200,000 years. I said we've been here 200,000 years. It took us 199,800 years to get to the population level of 1 billion. That was in 1800, which you can see on this graph is almost where the spike goes up. We hit 1 billion in 1800, and in the next 200 years, which would be about 2 seconds in that imaginary year that I just mentioned, we added another 6.5 billion people. And during that time, we went from the rich harmony of nature to this scene, which is a horrible graphic illustration of how we humans are trashing the only planet out of trillions that can keep us alive. So how do we fix this mess? Well, I like to keep things simple. So I've got 4 huge, grossly unsustainable problems that we need to address, and we need to address them soon. First 3, overpopulation, global economy and stuff, consumption of stuff, and fossil fuel dependence. Our population is growing on a net basis, net total births minus deaths on a daily basis, 230,000 new people per day. That's a city the size of Birmingham, Alabama, probably a whole lot larger than Fort Myers. I didn't check your numbers today. The global economy we have is based totally on growth and profits. And it's based on the maximization of the consumption of stuff of all kinds in a world of finite resources. And that doesn't work in a finite world. Fossil fuel dependence is driven by the first 2. So the 4th one is our food choices, and I'm going to talk a lot about food choices in the next 45 minutes. I think it's the most important for our health, obviously, and also for the health of the environment, which is also important for our sustainability as a species. Looking at our food choices, this image is a family in North Carolina that represents the food in the image, 1 week's worth of groceries for those people. Most of it's packaged, much of it comes from animals, and there's a whole lot of sugar there. There's very little whole plants on the table. I see some tomatoes and grapes. Pretty typical standard American diet. So Therein lies hope. Our food choices, because of their incredible power to promote health, hope, and harmony on planet Earth as we shift from a junk food, animal-based diet, standard American diet, to the kind of diet that the speakers have been talking about all day today, whole food, plant-based diet. So also the food, someone else mentioned earlier in a lecture, it's a factor of 10. On a per calorie basis, it takes over 10 times as much energy, 10 times as much water, and 10 times as much land to produce the same number of calories in plant-based calories. 10 times. So what can we hope for if we get people moving toward a plant-based diet, even if it's not whole food plant-based? Reducing world hunger, ocean acidification, species extinction, water pollution. It's just about everything that's wrong with our world can be lessened through a shift to a whole food plant-based diet. Returning millions of acres to forest and greatly reducing the #1 cause of climate change. And I'm going to probably emphasize climate change more than anything else, primarily because I think it's like the elephant in the room. It exacerbates all of our other problems. So we may have waited too long, and we'll talk about that as we go on. So let's go back and look at the carrying capacity. As you probably know, we now have 7.6 billion people on this planet. How many humans can the planet support? So the obvious answer is depending on how they live, how they eat, how they consume stuff, how they dispose of waste. So the source for this data is from the Global Footprint Network. So if you're an average European, which live in a more dense environment than we do, the Earth could support 2 billion people indefinitely. It gets worse. If you're an American, which all of us are, most of you are, I'm sure, we could only support 1 billion people indefinitely. We already have 7.5, and we're well on our way to 8. So that's arithmetic that a third grader would probably figure that's not going to work out. Now, I did my own calculated estimate, and I'm assuming that the Footprint Network folks didn't take into consideration that what happens if the Europeans and Americans all shift to a plant-based diet. Then we can support a lot more people, and it makes my next analysis a little more realistic. If we're striving to get down to 4 billion instead of having to get down to 1 or 2 billion. So how do we do that? Well, right now, as I said, net births minus deaths is 230,000. We don't want to start killing people off, and so we want to control the problem through a reduction in the birth rate. Well, that's a lot easier said than done, but if we reduce the births to 100,000 per day, it would produce an annual decrease in the population, provided deaths remain the same, of 22 million people. It would take us 45 years to lower the total by 1 billion. So to get down to my 4 billion mark, we'd need 160 years. To get down to 2 or 1 billion, like the chart said earlier, we'd need 300 years. And we don't have that much time. So the details of how to do all that, I'm just from an engineer standpoint, I'm explaining what needs to be done. I'm not saying I know how to do it. Overconsumption. We have a current global economy based on infinite growth in a world of finite resources. All you hear about is growth. If you don't grow as a business, you die. If you don't make money as a business, you die. It's all about money and growth. That's the way the economy works. You got to play by the rules if you want to live on planet Earth. Well, we need to change the rules. We need a global economy that's changed so that sustainability trumps profit and growth. In other words, if we think that Mother Nature is truly our mother, then that's got to be our #1 priority, to take care of our mother, and we need some new rules. The UN or some international organization like that could be the organization that develops and distributes and asks the world's leaders to enforce them. Green cities are built all over the world, and as I said in the previous slide, details for how to get that started and get it done are above my job grade. So I'm going to fossil fuel now. That's a 747, which is now about done in terms of commercial flight. But for every long-haul flight of an aircraft about that size, we burn 110 tons of jet fuel. 110 tons for one flight. Conveniently, that equals to about, that's a 747, that's how I remember this number, 747 pounds of fuel for every person on that one-way flight from here to Asia, for example. So, in the fossil fuel usage, if we do a lot of things right, the fossil fuel usage will take care of itself. New economy favors green energy, so we cut down on fossil fuels. Less foreign trade, we cut down on shipping charges and fuel. Air travel only for emergencies, cut out those 110 tons per flight. Green food production, mostly local. Fossil fuels can drop by 90%. I made up that number. But the details, again, are above my job grade. All of these things have to be done. I mean, we're coming down the home stretch here. The world is about full, and we have to get the attention of people in positions of authority to get this done. Fossil fuel reduction, you can see we're not doing well at all. That's all of the categories of fuels, including the renewables at the bottom. Every one of the graphs, oil, coal, natural gas, still skyrocketing. No slowing down in sight. In fact, they're saying we need to triple our energy consumption by the end of this century in order to keep up with demand driven by population growth and more people eating the Western diet. So why are food choices so important? In a short answer, they determine how the earth is used. The part that's not for national parks and living space and manufacturing space and shopping space, highways and all the things that we use, determines how the rest of the world is used to grow our food. They have a huge impact on our health, and these are a list of the things that food is the #1 driver of, based on the unbridled growth of our civilized population. So what's going on with our food choices? The upper left is a family in Chad, upper right is a family in Ecuador, and that's the image of the Americans in North Carolina and the Germans. It's hard to see on this screen, but this is 1 week's worth of food for each family. The Ecuadorians have a family of 9, and no packaged goods on their table, no packaged goods in Chad. The Germans, a whole lot like ours. Actually, they spend a little bit more money than we do per week, per family, but they have a lot more beer on their table than we do. So look at this graph. How are we doing from a world standpoint? We think we're doing pretty well because of great organizations like this one, and we're trying to eat more plants. But look at the industrialized nations, that's the blue line at the top, eating the most calories per person from animals. But every single region of the world, including the transition regions, the developing world, the undeveloped world, they're all beginning to eat more meat, dairy, eggs, and fish. So this is a good time to pause and talk about species extinction. I mentioned the fact that the sustainability of our species may be in question. The UN reported in 2010, quote, scientists estimates that 150 to 200 species of plant, insect, bird, and mammal become extinct every 24 hours. Now we're talking about a lot of extinction going on. Could humans become extinct? Let's take a look at history and science to answer that question. First, a look at history. Easter Island. How many people have heard of Easter Island? I don't know if you know what happened there, but the Dutch settled there in about 500 AD. they swelled, excuse me, the Dutch didn't settle there. The Rapa Nui settled there in 500 AD. They came from Polynesia by boat, maybe 15 or 20 or 30 of them. We don't know how many, but their population swelled to 15 or 20,000. Their civilization soared. They were really on a growth spurt and everything. They were probably saying to themselves, life has never been greater than it is right now. And about 1,000 years after they got there, things started breaking apart as they didn't take into account the impacts of their lifestyle choices on their environment. So what started as lush forest over the completely tropical island, after 1,200 years of human stewardship, it became barren. The population dropped. Species of birds and animals went away. The trees went away, which is what they used to build boats for their fishing. Their whole lifestyle collapsed once they realized, too late, that they had exceeded the capacity of their island to sustain 15,000 people and growing. So now for science. A few more big picture scientists. Dr. E.O. Wilson was the first one there earlier from Harvard. A big picture scientists, I have found that they're pretty rare. First of all scientists study a fairly narrow field, and most scientists are employed by someone else, some company, and that company is in charge of what they're allowed to say and what they're allowed to study. So it's hard to find a big picture scientist that can put all the numbers together and report it to you. Most of them are paid by conservative entities that want to keep the status quo going like we have in the United States. And bold views can put careers at risk. Most everybody here knows of T. Colin Campbell, right? I've been on his board for 6 years now. I'll tell him you applauded when he is a big picture scientist. He started as a nutritional scientist, but he's now a big picture scientist, and I'll speak of him a little bit later. But I've been around during the time when the way he's been treated by Cornell University is an embarrassment to the mighty, fabulous work that this man conducted during his 60-year career, most of which was spent there. But what happened when he started reporting the science that implicated the meat and dairy industries, that's when he became persona non grata at Cornell. And it's an ugly story. We think of Cornell, like all of the Ivy League schools, as being trustworthy and honest and pursuing true education. Well, it's not the case in all cases. So I'm going to bring up the next big picture scientist. This is one everybody's heard of, I think, unless there's some children in the room. Jacques Cousteau. We know him mostly as a skin diver, but he did a lot of conservationist work. He was funded by Ted Turner. Everybody knows his name, I think. And toward the end of his life, I read this in Turner's biography. Dr. Cousteau said, "Ted, humankind may or may not be part of the plan that nature has for the earth in the future. Life will be reborn, but first the world as we know it now will die." He said that in 1997, 21 years ago, at age 87. He died later that year. Now here's a man most people have never heard of. I had not heard of him a year ago when I started researching big picture scientists. But this book is called Smallpox and Its Eradication. Frank Fenner was the lead scientist, medical doctor on that entire process that rid the world of this horrible disease. He's probably one of the most respected and revered people that ever lived in Australia, which is where he's from. Also, toward the end of his life, this was reported in a newspaper in 2010. Homo sapiens will become extinct, possibly within 100 years. It's an irreversible situation. I think it's too late. He was 95 when he said that. He also died that same year. Now you may be thinking people that talk about humans going extinct die right away. Well, maybe they're just not worried about being scorned anymore about their opinions. Maybe they're more prone to being totally and brutally honest. James Lovelock, he's not dead, but he may be close, alive and well at 98. I checked him yesterday just to make sure he's still living. Wikipedia said he is. I've never met him, but I've watched a few of his videos, and he's very charming, beautiful English accent, winner of all kinds of prizes, and he's probably, they say he's the greatest independent science in the history of Great Britain. He never worked for anybody except as a consultant. He studied in a lab behind his house, and he just followed the science, and whatever looked interesting, he would study it. He came up with a theory called Gaia, which is Gaia is a self-regulating system of the entire planet. In other words, our entire planet, including us, a part of the Gaia system. Here's a couple of his quotes. He said in 2010, "When you see the whole picture, it really is fearsomely bad. I fear that many of us will not survive. At best, 1 billion of us will survive, possibly a lot less than that." And then the one that got to me was, "If the earth improves as a result of our presence, then we will flourish." And that's like any other organism. If it's in balance with nature, if we cause nature to improve, we'll last forever. If we don't, nature will get rid of us. So, does that look like Earth improving to you? Going back to the earlier slide. Now we go to T. Colin Campbell, who is the last one of the big picture guys here. He stated in his first book, "The closer we get to eating a diet of whole plant foods, the better off we will be." Everybody knows about that. And he also said in his second book, "No less than our future as a species hangs in the balance." And he came to believe that based on all of the environmental damage that we're doing and the climate change, in fact, he was the one that first turned me on to studying climate change. He's the only one of these big picture scientists, the five that I've mentioned so far, who is not shackled and chained by the protein myth. The protein myth is the sincere, honest belief that's held by most of the brightest, most powerful, most intelligent people in the entire world. That belief that we really must eat some animal protein to be healthy. That includes most of our medical doctors, as you know. And therefore they have a locked brain to anything that could happen if we did not eat the animal protein. They prevent incredibly powerful plant-based solutions to our most serious health, hunger, and sustainability issues from even making it to the table for consideration. We don't even talk about what it could do for water shortage, because all of the scientists believe we have to eat their protein, their animal protein. So we got a long way to go here. Here's another, he's not a big picture scientist, but he's an activist that's relevant on this topic. Bill McKibben, who is known as Mr. Climate Change pretty much in the United States and maybe around the world. He founded an organization called 350.org, which is the parts per million that we should not ever exceed if we expect to survive on this planet. He works at Middlebury College as a professor. I saw a video that you can look at it on YouTube less than a year ago, in April 2017, and in that video he said, "To be entirely honest, we don't know for sure that we can slow down global warming enough to matter. We've waited a very long time to get started." The data here says we have not started. That's the parts per million by year since 1960. Since long after I was born, it's gone from 300 to over 400 that we have today. And 350 is considered the maximum that we can have and still have a decent life. Also, if you look at this, this is historical, going back 650,000 years. CO2 part per million now at about 410, and still climbing rapidly. See the green line, that's Bill McKibben's 350 line. And you see the line below that, the blue, that said we have not been above that blue line for 650,000 years, and you can see where we are now. So what's happening when that kind of parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere does to us? It traps the gas inside that barrier. It heats us up, and ice begins to melt. The Greenland ice sheet, by year, 286 billion tons per year. This is just since 2002, and no slowing down in sight. Global sea ice area. Now, when the Greenland ice sheet melts, that's on land. When that goes into the water as water, that causes not only climate change, but it also raises sea levels, because all of that water is now added to the water of the world. Whereas this is global sea ice now. When it melts, it doesn't affect sea level because it's already floating in the water. But this is satellite data for the last 40 years, and you can see these are cyclical patterns for times of the year. And this is global, so we're looking at Antarctica and Arctic, and so the low point every year is February. And guess what the last 2 years were in terms of breaking away from the pack? Those two red lines on the right were 2016 and 2017 respectively, which to me, I fear, looks like a tipping point. The last data point there was last month. So this is what happens when the ice melts in the ocean. It's called the albedo. I call it a case of blue and white. When the ocean is white, frozen all year long, it reflects 85% of the energy that comes down from the sun. When it turns to blue, it reflects 7%. It absorbs all of that heat. And that's why the temperatures in the Arctic are rising so much faster than the rest of the world. You can see right here the global, the brown line at the bottom, is projecting that we'll be at 2 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial levels by 2030. That's the IPCC, the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That's their goal, to keep under by the end of the century. This graph is clearly showing we're on track to hit that 2 degrees centigrade, above which nobody really believes we can have a normal life. So, are things getting better? Well, I haven't given up hope, but I'm trying to be realistic. As an engineer, I try to report data, not things that I wish were true. So, but I liken our situation to a runaway luxury train. By the way, everybody here is on that train. You may not feel like you're living in luxury, but you lived with indoor plumbing last night, and you live with a garage and heating control and stuff like that. Things that the third world thinks of as luxuries, we all have taken for granted here. But I estimate that there's 2.5 billion people in the world. The wealthiest 2.5 billion are already on that train. I'm on that train. I enjoy a lot of those luxuries just like everyone else. And nobody wants to get off that train. Nobody wants to give up all this stuff. We have to have a whole new system with new rules, because we can't depend on people to just go choose to live in a tent or something. You can't see that very well, but that's the club car of the Orient Express, which I rode one time from Venice to Paris, and it is truly luxurious on that train. But we're talking about a train that's constantly going faster. We're adding more people every day, and we're adding more comforts. And therefore, to depend on human beings to turn it around is not going to work. We have to change the system. So, how do we address the world sustainability nightmare. I call it a case of planet management. You know, if you had a house that had 3 bedrooms, you probably wouldn't want to put 40 people in that house. Well, we've got a planet that can basically maybe house 4 billion people, and we've already got 7.6 billion in it. So we've got to learn how to do planet management, and that's not easy because of all the governments and religions and industries and economists, etc. But we want to have a quality of life for all humans. We don't want half the world to be starving to death. We'd like to have a nice life for everybody. And I like to use the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, and 3rd grade arithmetic. And food choices are always crucial. We're never going to get there without dramatically doing that. And the rest of it is above my job grade, but it needs to get done. So my own conclusions about saving our civilization and our species, as a grandfather of 8 now, I'll never give up hope. As long as I'm breathing, I'm going to keep talking about this because no one knows for sure what's going to happen in the future. But I'm an engineer and I can read data, and I know we're in trouble if we don't make some big changes soon. We must address food quickly around the entire developed world. If we do, it can move the needle in 5 years, and then we still have to do those other things, the population consumption, overconsumption, and the fossil fuels. We've got a lot to do, and a lot of it's food. I'm going to take a break here and talk about food and my view of the food we should be eating. I don't call it vegan because to me, if I ask the next vegan what does that mean, they'll start telling me what they don't eat. And what's important is what you do eat when it comes to your health. So I chose Dr. Campbell's definition. The closer we get to eating a diet of whole plant-based foods, the better off we will be. So I came up with a scale of 4-leaf, 1-leaf, 2-leaf, 3-leaf, 4-leaf. 4-leaf is over 80% of your daily calories from whole plants. Now remember, bread and pasta and fruit juice are not whole plants. I'm talking about whole plants in nature's package. And wine and beer and scotch is not either, but thank God they're plant-based. So the 1-leaf level is over 20 to 40% of calories from whole plants. That's like 4 times more whole plants than the average American is getting from the standard American diet. 2-leaf, 3-leaf. And so it's a scale. It's not necessarily vegan or vegetarian. It's focusing on what we do eat, not what we're avoiding, and what everybody likes everywhere. It implies some wiggle room. Now this definition is important for another reason for me personally, is because as I have enough time, I'll explain briefly at the end. I'm working on a product for industry that will involve maybe 200,000 employees in one organization, and the management approving a system whereby those people are urged to improve their eating by adding more whole plants. We could not use the term vegan. That would not work in industry. So we had to have a definition that works, and because we know that in this country 95% of the people don't want to be vegan, and it would be a big problem in a corporation. So the 4-leaf survey will give you an estimate of your own 4-leaf level, and you can take it at 4leafsurvey.com. There's 12 multiple choice questions, 4 answers, 4 choices per question. And it does a pretty good job of identifying the people that are getting less than 20% of their calories. In other words, below the 1-leaf level. And those are the ones we want to identify, because those are the people that need help. They need help in taking charge of their health and reversing their heart disease, diabetes, and even their cancer, right? So in the survey, there's 3 questions about fruits, veggies, and starches, and omega-3s, and that's the only place you can get plus points. The rest of the red questions are negative points. And then at 4leafsurvey.com. Now, I started studying this stuff got inspired back in 2002. 15 years later, my daughter has finally come around after seeing that movie, What the Health. She and her husband, who's a hockey player and an engineer, went to see What the Health. And she scored, there she is on her wedding day. She's 38 years old now. She has 2 little girls. And she wrote and told me they had seen that movie at her husband's initiative, and that she was gone full-on vegan. And I'm getting a new recipe every day with pictures that she takes with her iPhone. She's got 2 little girls, 4 and 8, and and she's going to be feeding them the right diet, I think. So there's more hurdles about plant-based eating that all of you are familiar with. Humans have always eaten meat. They ate meat in the Bible. What about calcium and osteoporosis? I simply can't live without my burgers. Too expensive to eat a healthy diet, and it's not convenient to eat that way. Well, I say au contraire. This is, that's a meal at the Houston airport. That is a 4-leaf meal. That's like 95% of the calorie from whole plants. And that's a double order of the steamed veggies, brown rice, and some noodles also on the side. That's a 4-leaf meal. It was $6.99 at the airport. It was good. At home, I recently came up with what I call the 444, my 444 line of easy meals at home. Well, I just found this product, by the way, and I heard Dr. Guthrie say salt may not be as bad if you eat a lot of whole plants. That one, some of these have a lot of salt in it, but this one doesn't. This one has long grain, white brown rice and wild rice and broccoli and I think chickpeas. With that, and these are my raw ingredients. So I've got the frozen meal, which you can cook in the bag. I've got my broccoli and cauliflower. I chop them all up, ready to go when I get home from the grocery store, and I got my seasonings. So I take great comfort. Now my wife is not completely on board. That's why I got to cook my own meals. So if I want to get a 4-leaf meal, so I take great comfort in knowing that I can go in the kitchen and in 4 minutes I can have a 4-leaf meal for $4. That's why I call it 444. But food choice, you cheering for my wife or my 444 meals? Food choices are not enough. We've got tipping points. We may have already passed it with climate change, water consumption, species extinction. We're adding 230,000 people a day. Got a massive heat engine known as our civilization. And what we really need is an emergency. We humans do well with an emergency. Something like World War II, where we, got the whole nation involved in this effort to fight the evil empire. But here's a hypothetical emergency. Let's say 50 years from today, we knew precisely on January the 28th of 2068, we knew that a asteroid was going to hit planet Earth. We knew where it was going to hit. We knew exactly when it was going to hit, and we knew it was going to destroy 80% of all of life on Earth. What do you think would happen? Governments worldwide would marshal the entire planet into unprecedented action. So I say the problem is with that example is there is no asteroid and there is no time. You more than anyone knows that hardly anybody agrees on diet or climate change or anything else. It's all down political lines. So climate change alarm. Now I came up with this myself as a perceived. So if we don't have a real emergency, maybe a perceived emergency would work if we got enough people on board promoting it. Nothing short of a perceived global emergency can influence enough leaders in government, industry, academia, and religion to join forces in making the reversal of climate change the entire world's top priority. Then they must work urgently together as if our future as a species depended on their success because it very likely does. So now, time for a little soul searching. Got a few more minutes. How can we learn to live sustainably? While we add 30,000 people a day, unbridled consumption, what will it take to stop the madness? Just a few ideas. What progress do you see first? I see progress when I attend an event like this and hear speakers talk about what they're doing, and I know that we're moving in the right direction to a large extent. But when I talk to colleges, I ask them, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? What about your research? What about your career? Try to challenge young students coming into the workplace to get involved with things like population control, green energy, monetizing CO2 removal, sustainable housing. So what can we all do? What did Gandhi say? Be the change you want to see. We can eat mostly whole plants, zero animals, live as green as you possibly can, raise the awareness about the many unsustainable situations we are now facing in the world. We need to raise that awareness to people that are much more powerful than I am and whose job grade is much higher than mine is. I have one more quick thing to share with you. I mentioned that I'm an engineer and a former consultant. I've got this product that we're working on at 4Leaf, which is a software product based on leveraging the power of the profit-driven economy that got us in this mess. And the name of the product is ARCH, A-R-C-H. It's an acronym for automatically reducing the cost of healthcare. It's basically a software product that once we get it fully tested, you know, whether your company has 200 people or 200,000 people, it's plug and play. And all of a sudden, people start getting these gentle messages asking them to take the 4Leaf survey online, a database that keeps track of that survey, a messaging system that says you did great on the survey, you even did better than you did last time. They put their weight in there, they put their prescription drugs in there. We start getting management reports. This shows top management what happens when there's a dietary shift away from animals to eating mostly plants. So we're talking about a lot of money here on the table. A company with 200,000 or 300,000 employees has $2 or $3 billion worth of health care. So a savings of 5 or 10% is huge. $300 million savings. I mean, it's incredible, but we have to get this thing in the works in the hands of employers of large self-insured companies. So as I said, it's made up of a survey, a dynamic database, a messaging system, and all importantly, a management reporting system. For more info on that particular product, you can go to archby4leaf.com. If you want to see every slide that I just covered today, you can go to HP, like Healthy Planet, JMH.com, HPJMH.com. It's right at the top. And so again, we must never give up hope. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, and indeed it is the only thing that ever has. And then my personal favorite, people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. Stephen Jobs, the late great Stephen Jobs. There's the 4Leaf Guide, and that's the earlier book with all of my contact information on the left, and I would be happy to address any questions, comments. Joanne. I'm going to try to. Yay! Yay! Septuagenarian I am. Yes. Well, I promised to keep politics. I signed a waiver with Ray, with the people. Yeah. Last year, I guess 2 years ago now, when Barack Obama announced Joe Biden was taking over this cancer task force initiative, I wrote a total of 6 letters to Joe Biden. One was delivered on an 18 by 24-inch foam poster board with a letter outlining what we wanted them to do. And the question was, why has there never been a human cancer trial to test the work of T. Colin Campbell that was conducted in the 70s and 80s? We're talking 40 years ago. Not a single response from any of those letters. One of them was also addressed to our ambassador to Ireland, because my friend Dr. John Kelly, that I was writing a book with, lived there. He thought for certain that since Biden was going to be in Ireland, that he would certainly visit with John Kelly, who wrote the book, Stop Feeding Your Cancer, which everyone should read, particularly those who have relatives with cancer. So I have been writing letters and reaching out. I got close one time with James Cameron. I met with the big movie director, and we had a summit in his backyard. And he's done some things, but he hasn't fully leveraged his contacts in the world, his influence in the world to do what really needs to be done. I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying you need to know a lot of people, and a lot of people need to know your name. For example, he lives near Oprah. Oprah's another one that could get a lot going on if she got passionate about this topic. Anybody else? I jumped off the stage for this. Come on now. Here we go. Yeah. Lab-based. Oh. Well, I think they're good products for people in transition. They're all plant-based, right?
No, they're actually taking cells from animals.
No. Well, I'm not for any animal protein. So, but all of the fake meat, the plant-based meats, they're doing a pretty good job. And I think that's great for people that are making the shift and want to change. But I would encourage them to eventually just learn how to like whole plants, because there's nothing like it if you're eating a good diet. Sorry. Yes, ma'am. Well, plant-based diet, almost everything you eat. I've yet to find a plant-based food go to nutritiondata.com, and you can break down the food by macronutrient and by every vitamin that's in it. Every food has protein in it. And Dr. Campbell has proved in Ornish, we don't need any animal protein, ever. Someday it should be against the law. And I actually believe this, when you talk about, if we really believe that Earth is our mother, and without her, we're dead, then anybody that does anything that breaks the rules to harm our mother, that should be punishable by death someday. But that's not going to be during my lifetime. I've got a new granddaughter coming along in a few weeks, maybe during hers. No? I have some books over there if anybody would like. Be happy to sign a copy for you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your attendance. Great crowd.